Okay, let's move on now and just look at the people who actually built the internet. Um, Mostly it is an American system, although you could argue that the UK also had a lot to do with it, with the research that was done. But that's another story. So basically, the system was built by a series of guys who were part of the homebrew club, and it's periphery people. But the people who did run it were the nerds of this world. They were the guys who dreamt, built, and experimented. Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and others who were around at the time were trying to use computers to make what they saw as their hobby. And that was primarily what Wozniak thought, that it was a hobby and it was great fun to tinker with. Jobs, on the other hand, saw the potential and saw the market and went for it and started to build machines that were the Apple One, the Apple Two, possibly the Apple Three, then the other machines that followed on from that, which was ending up with the Mac Plus, of which I have still got a couple of machines. I had about six at some stage, but I've given them over to the university for students to play with. But the internet had not yet started in any real sense. It was a university system, if anything, and people weren't that interested. There was a lot of interest in the way that computers could talk to each other, and Apple Talk came up and started to run across various different machines on a piece of telephone cable wire. There's nothing more than that. And I still have, well, I gave over to the university, the machines that I got and a load of cables to connect these machines together. Very slow, very awkward and difficult to set up, but it worked. Um, but the system was toyed between those who saw it as a free system and those who wanted to make money out of it, big money. Jobs was the excellent marketeer. He started to sell the machines out of the garage, and his mates all started to build up machines for them to sell. And they were very successful, as we know. Bill Gates, who was primarily a software engineer, also tried to do this. And his famous letter to the Homebrew Club about, stop stealing my code. He was very much the entrepreneur and pushed forward his system. And it worked. Windows Basic, Basic in its right at that stage became the dominant system. And it wasn't until much later that he saw what was and the others were doing at Apple that they started to build their own Windows system very badly, you might say, and arguably hasn't improved that much. Although the Apple system is far superior, in my opinion. But let's just look at the way that the system evolved. And it was an evolvement over the years from the late 80s onwards. The system evolved. Big business came in and started to tinker with the system to suit their business needs and their business plans. And it wasn't long before the free end of the market was battling against big corporations. So the essence of this portion of the lecture is all about how business has taken over what was essentially free, and has remained that way. There are various other people who I've not mentioned yet, and I will in the next lecture, who battled against this. Linus Torvald being the most famous, and still is. His version of Unix or Linux was and still is the prime source of free software and free open systems. and it is immensely powerful. Even the Chromebook that I'm now recording this on has that system, or one of the derivatives of that system, embedded in it. And I can go down to the core of that and run Linux programs quite easily on this machine. It only costs £230. So the big corporates of this world are there. They think they've got patents that protect them from being copied, but the free movement is still there. And essentially, that's what the internet was all about, was the free migration and free use of software across the global system, allowing people to use programs given into the system by the nerds of this world. You could argue that probably the most famous of all of these programs is the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet essentially is free software. You pay for Excel, yes, but in my early days of programming, I learned how to build a spreadsheet, and that was not that difficult. The guys who invented it were for the Apple machine, and in other lectures, I've actually got screenshots of what it looked like. So, go back to the beginning of this slide. There was a battle, and there still is a battle between the free and the market that wants you to pay for everything. And now there is a third, and that is the way that governments are coming in and demanding that the system be controlled. And again, that's another lecture and another pin in the way that you might find that the internet is moving forward. In what direction? These three elements are probably the ones that are going to steer it: the free market, the paid for market, and the governments of this world.